Hello there everyone and welcome to the channel. In this video I am going to be talking about the Rogue Remaster and my thoughts and opinions on that and how I feel about the whole thing and kind of necessity and improvements and how my own opinions might affect that. So for the necessity of the game, kind of how necessary it was to provide the game to a new audience and to improve upon things with the original game to make it a more enjoyable experience, it wasn't all that necessary, really. The game played pretty well. Rogue on release was a pretty playable game, more so than the game it released alongside, Unity. But it did play fairly well, kind of the same as Black Flag, because it worked on the same basic game engine and that kind of thing. But in terms of availability to the console players, it was kind of, this remaster was geared towards Xbox players could already play the original game through reverse compatibility. So it was only really the PS4 players that needed it, and that is not to diminish it, but it is good to provide a game to people, but it wasn't like as necessary. Less people needed to be able to play the game, and just in comparison to the Ezio Collection remaster, where the games didn't look super great. They hadn't aged great in terms of graphics, and gameplay was a bit off. And not that there were huge improvements in that in terms of really improving the gameplay, but graphics were improved quite a lot in the Ezio Collection, especially in Assassin's Creed 2. Colors were more fleshed out, as were the textures. Like red was more red, and green was more green, and blue was more blue, and so on down the entire rainbow. But not so much in Rogue, where there weren't really massive improvements in color. I'm sure there were slight ones, but I just didn't notice, having not played the original game in a fair bit. Textures, I noticed minor improvements during cutscenes when you get close-up angles and more expanded views of the characters. I could see the textures were a bit better, but not overall noticeably in the whole game, just in cutscenes, really. And other than that, I noticed nothing really, other than in certain environments in the original game, I would notice a bit of a haze kind of around at the closer to the edge of the draw distance, but in the remaster there wasn't as much of that. So there were improvements, they just weren't huge, and that was probably that based on what there was to work with, there wasn't a lot that could be hugely improved, and it was just a bump up to the kind of PC graphics that were available. And yeah, I feel like I didn't really enjoy the remaster a lot, just because I didn't enjoy Rogue a lot. Rogue was a decent game, but being kind of just a last game for 7th gen players to kind of have a last go at the AC franchise, it was kind of just Black Flag remodeled with a few new innovations in gameplay, like the puckle gun, which was nice, and the grenades also cool. So some new tools at your disposal to use to fight your enemies and destroy them. And those were fun, but there were also innovations that I didn't really enjoy, like hidden assassins in bushes and things. I didn't like those because they impeded the fluidity of the game, made it more tedious, as did the poison gas. Not to the same degree, but still it would get in the way sometimes, and Shay would just run into a cloud because you edged the joystick wrong, and then he would just cough for a good 30 seconds standing there, getting beat up. And a lot of the set pieces were actually quite similar to the ones in Black Flag. Like the Lawrence Washington assassination was quite similar to the Woods Rogers one, and the Adewale one was similar to the Hornigold assassination, and so on. But I found that it was kind of just Black Flag without the same vigor and strength of protagonists like Edward had. With Shay, there wasn't that same amount, and there wasn't the same amount of time, being that Rogue was half as long, to develop the character. And so the game, it just really suffered from a lot of pitfalls of being not as big a project as the main game at the time, which was Unity. So a remaster could never really be any huge improvement on a game that wasn't already a hugely great game. But those are my thoughts on the remaster, really, and I'm just going to kind of say now that if you liked the video, give it a like. If you want to see more of the channel, subscribe, and if you think someone else would enjoy the video, share it with them, and I'll see you in the next one.